to take just a moment to talk to you a little bit about how digestion and the rate of digesting different nutrients affects what food choices you should make for daily nutrition versus training nutrition. You've heard me say before that you've got to keep these two concepts separated because one is all about promoting wellness and health, and it's slow foods digestion, and healthy whole foods, that's daily nutrition, whereas training nutrition is all about the most efficient, best, quickest fuel you can get into your bloodstream without causing stomach upset and with giving you energy as quickly as possible. So two very different concepts actually at the different ends of the spectrum, and it's all based on rate of digestion. So when you think of eating and digestion, you're eating some sort of combination of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, fibers, water, fluid, that sort of thing. Those go into your stomach. Your stomach is like a holding tank. It holds them and it starts wrestling with them to mechanically start breaking them down. Now when you do swallow them, you do have enzymes in your mouth that can start to break down simple carbohydrates. So simple carbohydrates are going to be our first food that is digested and gets passed through. Those start to break down in the mouth, where everything else has to wait at least until the stomach. So those go into the stomach as well. Now again, everything is wrestling around in the stomach. The stomach opens up and lets small amounts out into the intestines. So they've been wrestled with, added hydrochloric acid and enzymes in the stomach, and then go into the intestines for further digestion. They're in a liquid state now, and then absorption. So of course the stomach doesn't absorb, it sends through to get absorbed. The leaving the stomach is the tricky part. So simple carbohydrates, especially those in liquid form, so think soda or hot chocolate or juice. Any carbohydrates that are in liquid form are going to be the very quickest to go through. These can actually hit and impact your bloodstream within 15 minutes mouth to bloodstream, all over. Simple carbohydrates in a solid form are going to be next. These also, depending on their solid form, or gels are going to be somewhere in between that. But if they've been mechanically broken down and then reconstituted, like in an energy bar, something like that, those can be very fast too. 15, 20, somewhere in there to 30 minutes is what I would estimate for when those are going to impact your blood sugars and give you energy. That's something your body can use. Proteins take a little bit longer, maybe an hour to 2 hours. Some proteins, like isolated whey that's been broken down and isolated, that's going to be a little bit quicker, so within that first hour. But most whole food proteins, like in the form of meat or dairy or something like that, are going to take 1 to 2 hours to impact cells and bloodstream at all. Those take a while to digest and to go through. Fats, most fats, are going to take quite a bit longer, maybe in the 2 to 5 hour range. And I know that's a big range, but there are a lot of different types of fats. Your stomach really has to wrestle with those to get them broken apart, and then when they go into your intestines, they require bile. Bile's an extra step then to start breaking them down before they can get absorbed. Now, one exception is medium chain triglycerides, and we've talked about those a lot with coconut oil, and that's why that's a very, very special fat. It doesn't require bile, it's absorbed very quickly. It's along the lines of those simpler carbs and whey, something that might be absorbed and used within that first hour. So that's why we can use that effectively in training nutrition, whereas most fats are very difficult on us during training nutrition. The last thing that I didn't really mention is fiber then. Fiber is a type of carbohydrate, but it's very, very different than other ones. It has bonds that we as humans aren't able to break apart and use, so we can't even get to the glucose in those carbs. So something like cows, animals, they can break apart those bonds, and that's why a cow can weigh hundreds and hundreds of pounds eating grass. Whereas if all we ate was grass or a vegetable, we would not weigh hundreds and hundreds of pounds because we can't get to that energy, whereas they can. We don't have the right enzymes. So fiber is wrestled with in our stomachs. It tries to break it apart. It's churning it, goes into our intestines once it's liquefied. Bonds are still intact. Our healthy gut bacteria and even the cells of the intestines actually use that fiber and use them as a food source. Maybe 50% of fiber is actually then eventually absorbed and used as glucose, but it's a very slow process. So fiber, for example, is something that's great for daily nutrition, but no good for training nutrition. You do not want something in your stomach that your stomach's having to wrestle with when you're trying to pedal your bike and you want blood flow to your legs. You don't want something in your intestines that's still being broken down, that's not fully being broken down, that might be gas producing, because that's one of the byproducts of those intestinal cells and bacteria. eating and feeding off of it. So all this to say, the quicker things then are what are appropriate for the training nutrition, and the slower things are more what we want for daily nutrition. Those quick ones, again, are going to be simple carbohydrates. If a protein, it's going to be something that's isolated, whey or soy, isolate. Protein, not a whole food protein quite as much. Small amounts of those here and there are fine. But if you want something very quick, it's going to be one of the isolated ones, like a soy or a whey. Also, the fats you're going to want are those quick ones, like medium-chain triglycerides, and that's why we use those a lot in training. Longer ones, like nuts, can be used when the training's really long or it's not at like a race pace, but those are going to be harder on your digestive system. For daily nutrition then, we want the whole slow food. So whatever carbohydrates you have, you want to be high in fiber. You want, a balance leaning towards more fats, more of these slow proteins, whole foods, and not these quick broken down ones. So those prevent wellness, those promote wellness. The quick ones promote efficient fuel. And that's kind of where all of that is based. Thanks.